some other issues. I can't even believe I'm saying this. You know, sometimes I read these headlines. This line today that anyone can be a woman. Well, that's funny if it comes from a crazy person, but it's coming from an august organisation, the Australian Academy of Science. This is just extraordinary. This is the definition adopted by this body today, that anyone who identifies as a woman is a woman. While a spokesman for the Academy has said the definition is inclusive, evolutionary biologist Madeleine Beekman, a professor at the University of Sydney, says, quote, "I find it very surprising that it comes from the Academy of Science, which should be based on science and not on some social, political agenda. So I'm shocked, actually." Well, I'm with you. And she says, if you're going to change the definition of a woman to something that's no longer based on biological fact, then what are you doing? The Australian's Bernard Lane broke this news today, and he joins me now from Sydney. I don't know. This stuff wears me down. It just wears me down. I think we're going backwards at a rate of knots as a society when we go down this path. But tell us, what was behind the Academy's decision to change the definition of a woman, Bernard?
Hi, Peter. I think that it's part of a much wider trend that has been going for about 6 or 7 years now, whereby the concept of gender identity, some inner feeling of your gender identity, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your birth sex, your biological sex, that concept of gender identity has got into federal anti-discrimination law, it's got into the federal public sector guidelines, it's in the universities, it's in the schools, it's in the inclusivity and diversity training in the big corporations. And I think the Academy of Science is following suit, and they've adopted this definition that a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman in a 10-year report aimed at increasing the status and presence of women in science, technology, engineering and maths. And this has become topical because in the context of COVID, the Academy is warning the Science Minister that progress made on women in science is going backwards, and yet at the same time the Academy defines a woman as anyone who wants to be a woman.
Yeah, let me just pick up that point because Beekman, Professor Beekman, the biologist, and I'm not a biologist, she is the one who's got as much issue with this new definition as anybody. She's saying you can't just make up science. You can't just make it up. Now, if Karen Andrews, who is a scientist, she's a science minister, wants to increase the number of women coming through the science courses into professional careers, if we're mixing up the definition of woman, how are we going to judge success or failure there? And political scientist Sheila Jeffries, she's hardcore on the left. She said in your piece today, you know, this is a quote from her, "Persons who wish to express a gender identity not usually stereotypically associated with a biological sex need to be accommodated in ways that protect them but do not conflict with the rights of women." And this is the real rub, where the rights of women, and, you know, Jeffrey's been a long-standing feminist of many years who's fought for equal rights of women. Now this gender diversity, gender identity, gender politics is pushing away and marginalising the equality that so many women like Jeffries fought for. That's the problem with this battle.
Yes, Peter, I mean, that's certainly what I've been told by many women on Twitter today in reaction to the article. What they say is that this conflict between protecting gender identity, you know, and a lot of people are just unsure what exactly gender identity is. So the conflict between protecting gender identity and the rights of women and girls based on their biological sex, that conflict has not been properly addressed. You know, this goes back in Australia to 2013 when the Labor government, the Gillard government, changed the Sex Discrimination Act and introduced this new concept of gender identity so that people could complain about discrimination on the basis of their gender identity, even if it had nothing to do with their biological sex. I went back today and looked at the media coverage from that time. I couldn't find any debate about the conflict between this new concept of gender identity and the rights based on biological sex of women and girls. It just seems to be a debate that we haven't had properly.
I think the language, the jargon in all of this has been a way to exclude people. I don't think people picked up the differences or the arguments about sex being different than gender. I think people were confused. I mean, I was working in the Parliament when those sorts of bills and things were raised. I don't know that they were supported by the opposition, but I can't remember, they were guidelines, I think. They weren't necessarily the status of legislation, but I can't, Bernard, remember the debate because I don't think anyone wanted to know about it. I think it was pushed through by Labor as quickly as they could. And you've now got the situation in Victoria. The changes came through on the 1st of May. Anyone can wake up tomorrow and just by paying $100 and filling out an online form, they can change their gender. They can change all their official documents. They don't have to go and see a psychiatrist. It doesn't have to be something that they have thought through carefully. They can be under the age of 18 even. This is where the concern is. Now, I'm not taking away people that have a genuine long-standing sense that they have been born in the wrong body. But that's not what we're talking about now. And in fact, I think this makes light of those people that have had the trauma of changing their gender at some time or their sex at some time in their life. This is a much sort of lighter touch, but I think incredibly dangerous.
It's relevant, Peter, that in the UK, the government there, after some years of debate, where the Conservative Party under Theresa May was floating the idea of changing the law to accept purely self-identified gender change, that the Conservative government under Boris Johnson has signalled that they are much more sceptical about this and that they are determined to protect single-sex spaces such as toilets, change rooms and so on, while at the same time acknowledging the rights of adult trans people and making sure, of course, that they are protected from harassment.
Yeah, well, look, I agree very much with that. That's the balance. But Victoria has gone down the complete self-identification path, and I think they've got this balance very, very wrong. I think there is no balance. Bernard Lane, thank you very much for your time.